Factory 720 EGR valves are just fine. They don't actually hurt anything. They don't degrade performance because all they do is add some extra exhaust gases into the fuel mixture at idle and part throttle. So you're not losing any power, but sometimes they break, become clogged. Yeah, maybe an off-road rig, you just don't want one. You have a aftermarket exhaust, a Doug Thorley or something. You're not using your EGR and you want to make a block-off plate. Today we're going to talk about that EGR block-off plate. This is not 50 state legal. This is officially an off-road modification, so keep that in mind as we move forward. Factory EGR piping on the back of the motor here. Just comes around from the intake manifold, exhaust manifold, drops a little bit of exhaust gas into the intake manifold. Because the EGR valve is recycling exhaust gas into the intake manifold, these little guys right here can get very stuck because they get hot with that exhaust gas. So be really careful when you remove those, and don't use heat because you're right next to your carburetor. You don't want to get any propane torch action going or anything like that. So this is kind of the idea we're going for right here, this little block-off plate. Just going to make one of those. Before you move forward, you want to pick up a spare gasket. This one here fits like a dozen models, and then you're just going to kind of hold her up there and make sure she looks okay. Once you've got those two things dialed in, you're going to also need to remove these studs, which once again they get hot. That can be kind of a pain. So use the old trick where you take the two, stack one on top of the other, and back the first one out just like on the water pump video. Just back them out together, this one into that one, and your stud will come out. See, I've got those two stacked up right there, just cranking it right off. Make sure and go slow. These old threads can just be a little touchy. Next step is to go fishing in your scrap pile or shopping or whatever you want to call it and find out a nice minty piece of steel that'll fit. That other block-off plate's 1/4 inch, so I'll probably go 1/4 inch. Yeah, it's really a lot of overkill, but I've got some spare scrap. Like this 1/8 inch piece that's actually cut off of a piece of square tube, that'd be mint. 16 gauge right here, that'd be pretty mint too. That's a little bit small, but you know, whatever. Give her a send. This is actually a furniture bracket that's no longer in use, so absolutely mint right. Your next step is to take the gasket, set it on your piece of minty fresh brand new steel there, get that all dialed in there, get some markings made, drill out your holes. You want to make sure and drill the holes before you shape it, because if you're using a drill press, it's a real good time to try and clamp a little tiny doodad. Go ahead and use your gasket to size out your drill bit size. Whatever just fits in the gasket nice, that'll be your drill bit for the trick. No, this is not the finished product, but as you can see, slides right on there nice, got the hole spacing good. Now it's time to double check on your felt tip markings there, see if there's anything left, and redraw those if you need to. Then we'll get away and cut that steel a little bit. Okay, we're just gonna kind of pretend it looks really pretty and perfectly shaped, but slides right on there. Perfect. Fits, not too bulky. All right, we'll call that good. I mean, it's better than the other one, right? Let me look at that monster. Okay. Now that you've made the thing, it's time to decide if you want to paint it or don't paint it. If you don't paint it, you're guaranteed to have a nice, clean, fresh mating surface. If you do paint it, you want to use some very thin coats just to make sure you don't get any bumps, because that's going to mess up the mating surface of the gasket and give you intake manifold leaks. So if you do paint it, be really cautious. I'm going to make sure and use some kind of high heat product. This one's rated at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Thin, even coats. So once you're just about ready to go, you're going to want to clean this surface really good. That'll be your Scotch-Brite and paper towel, maybe a little carbon choke cleaner, or cool tools if you have them. Now the factory studs are not going to work for this. You're going to need some replacement bolts. They're an M8 by 125. I painted this piece with some high heat exhaust paint. You don't have to paint it if you don't want to, it'll just rust. And you want to make sure you keep your paint layers very thin, because this is a gasket mating surface. So a couple layers, couple coats, really thin on that paint. You'll find that when you buy these gaskets, they can be either a higher percentage of cardboard or a lower percentage of cardboard, more metal. This one's got more cardboard. I like the ones with more metal better, but yeah, it's just kind of the luck of the draw on those ones. And because this little guy here is completely handmade, just with a grinder and a drill press, you can use a cordless drill if that's all you've got. You just kind of pick the way that it fits best and go for it. You do not need this guy to be super tight. This manifold I've got in front of me is not the final install of this. This is just for demonstration purposes. But I'm going to tighten it down a little bit more. But these guys don't have to be super tight. They're going into aluminum. They're just crushing a paper gasket. After you get it installed, you're going to want to check for vacuum leaks using your favorite method. You always want to be cautious of fire and don't spray things that destroy rubber or around rubber. I'll probably use propane with a flashback suppressor in just a little bit. So just be careful as you check for those vacuum leaks, and once you get that taken care of, you should be good to go. Remember, this is a off-road only modification, or for race purposes, not 50 state emissions legal, so you're just going to want to consider your local laws as you're working on your EGR system. Factory setup came with these nice split washers to keep the nuts from backing off the studs, so I'm going to reuse those with my new bolts on the setup here. The 16 millimeter bolt was barely biting in there, so I had to upgrade to something longer. This one's the same spec as your intake manifold bolt, and this one is like 20 millimeters, maybe 22, something like that. So that's just about right. I'm going to use those. The 16 would work, it just barely bites in there once you get those split washers going. Kind of wanted to give a little tour of this factory EGR valve here, just in case anybody had any questions on that. It's a small vacuum actuated valve that recirculates exhaust gas, puts in the intake manifold to improve fuel economy. It only works at part throttle and idle, so you're really not losing any horsepower having this guy on there, so no real reason to delete it unless it's broken. If it is broken, they are worth cleaning, and there's a diaphragm in there that can get a leak and then they won't actuate properly. So if they don't work, you can clean them and check your diaphragm. If they are working, don't clean them. A lot of times little valves and stuff are relying on the crud that's stuck in there to seal them. So if you clean them, they can develop a leak if they are working properly. So if it works, just don't touch it. And then, yeah, a lot of you all need these for your emissions, so they're pretty useful. I didn't put any product on this gasket. It's exhaust type gasket, so I don't usually put product on those. If I do wind up needing a product, I'll put that in the comments section. Remember, this is EGR modification, so off-road or track and dirt. It's not 50 state emissions legal, so be careful when you're messing with your EGR system that you stay in compliance with your local regulations. With that, leave a like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.